Hello and welcome back. Alright, so the last topic was pretty boring. It was just something that I wanted to discover on my own and explain to other people how things work in terms of algorithms. In this video, we're going to discuss how to make a video game, and I know that this is pretty much clickbait nowadays in the development world. Just titling a video how to make a video game is pretty much clickbait for any new type of individual who's looking to get into the gaming market, because developers have a tendency to make it look easy, and that's primarily because on our level many things are easy. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the topic. So, there are several types of games, and the most prominent one that many people want to make is a Google Play application or a iStore application. Now, Google Play is really simple, and so is the iStore. You need to learn one language and the APK that goes with the actual iPhone and Android application. So, what I mean by this is Google Play, you need to learn Java. And then you need to learn the Google APK. So, Java. And if I'm correct, yeah, Java is everywhere. But more specifically, you need to download Java Development. All Java downloads. Looking for the JDK, Java Developer Kit. That is what you're looking for. So, you have Java on the computer just because most things in our life use Java, and a lot of the applications on your computer use Java. But they also use C++. It's a combination of both. But if you're looking to get into the Google Play market, you want to download Java, the development kit. And the development kit is for people who want to obviously develop in Java, but there's more to it than that, because with the development kit, you're given access to the compiler and the different APIs, as it says here. The JDK includes the Java runtime environment and the Java compiler along with the Java APIs. And what that basically means is you'll be able to write your Java code, then you can run it, and then you can connect to different Java resources in order to do more and bigger and better things. And then once you learn pretty much everything that there is to learn with Java, you need to learn the Android APK. And as you can see here, Android APK is free APK download. As you can see here, APK is more the title of your game, the extension of your game. Excuse me, I should say your extension of the game. So what APK stands for is Application Program Kit, I believe. APK meaning Android Application Package. Okay, I was slightly wrong. Okay, but still, it's essentially the same thing. The Android application is a Linux-based system, so you need to actually have a APK package. so that it runs everything as a program would on Linux. And on Linux, you have packages. You have ZGTs, I think they're called. You have packages that run as software. But in Windows, you have .exes, which run as executables. And the difference is that when you have an executable, you can't really modify any of the processes without being able to break the possible encryption that's on the software itself. With Linux programs, there's usually very little encryption, and most of the software is actually editable by just going into their files and editing their files. Now, that's possible for some of the programs on .exe, but some of them you have to have a special type of compiler in order to go in and change things. I haven't really experienced that with Linux, but this is essentially what you want to get whenever you're developing a game. However, in order to get that, you need the SDK, right? Download Android Studio and SDK tools. Software Development Kit. Your APK is the end result. The Software Development Kit is what you need in order to actually develop the stuff. So I haven't downloaded the newest one, and in fact, as I've mentioned in a previous video, I'm not all too that experienced with Java itself. I'm more of a Ruby person who prefers to keep things simplified, and I don't like to have to define everything that I put into my code. I like to just have code that works. But there are some individuals who would rather prefer a non-interpretive language, which Java is kind of, but not really. It's interpretive up to a point, but most of the time you're going to be defining what the function does, how it interacts with the other functions in the application, and things like that. And if you're new to this game genre, then Java is not going to be nice to you. I'm going to say that now. Now, most people like to say, oh yes, programming is fun, programming is great, it's fantastic, you should only program if you like technology, and you'll see all these different things encouraging you to program. And there's a reason why people need that encouragement. And that's because when you're first learning how to program, number one, everything's gonna break on you. And number two, you're going to be spending more time trying to get your program to run in the first place than you are actually programming. So once you have Java and once you have the studio, where do you go to learn Java? Well, I prefer solo learn as a beginning step, right? I prefer solo learn as a beginning step. As you can see, there's a Java tutorial right here. It's available on Google Play, iStore, the Windows Store, and you can even just do it from the web. Now, I've already taken this course. I've already passed this course. And it is a very basic beginning course. And once you learn this, you need to start developing. And what I mean by this is you need to start going in and making your own applications. So the reason why you hear that it is the most important thing to do in programming is that you need to use the code that you learn, is because number one, yeah, obviously it's going to stay in your mind if you use it more. But I have found more help in learning how to use my language by simply trying to build something. I believe it was in the not this previous video, but the last previous video, that I actually found a new method in JavaScript. Now, I had stopped really learning JavaScript itself. I mean, I had learned ECMA 6 recently, and I'm still practicing with that. But I had pretty much stopped learning all the functions that JavaScript had because I didn't really find any other ones that would be useful to me. And something that I took advantage of inside of the Ruby language was the fact that you can multiply strings. In JavaScript, you can't do that. But in JavaScript, you do have the repeat function, which allows you to multiply strings or whatever you're trying to do. That is a very small example of where I've used coding my own things to learn things. So once you learn what you need to learn in this tutorial, you need to practice your code. And you will hear that in literally every coding forum and every coding social group or campfire or meetups, is you need to practice your code, because when you try to build things, you often find that you are learning more from building things than you did in the actual tutorial on how to get to the point where you can start building things. Now, the tutorials are for you to get a running start, and they're usually generalized, and that's because code changes all the time. For instance, in Rails 4, you have rake db migrate, which is simply saying, I want you to take what we currently have in the database and change it into this and treat this as our new database. That was a rake command. And there was a whole bunch of rake commands that you needed to know in order to do anything with the database and certain processes and things like that. Well, in Rails 5, from what I've been reading and what I've been learning, is rake is gone. This big chunk of the application that used to be so important that you needed to know in order to use Rails is now replaced with Rails commands in Rails 5. Now, for the most part, they change all the time, but they don't get updated all the time. And what I mean by that is, whenever you go looking for a job after you've learned what you've learned, they're most likely going to have either what you've learned or later. They're usually never going to have the newest language on the market. Okay, now, as far as I know, for developing games on the iPhone, you need to learn Swift. Now, I have not touched Swift. I really haven't. And so this is where you would start, and this is where you would start developing. And I would assume that the process is pretty much the same as Google Play. First, you need to download Swift, which is the main coding language that you need in order to develop in iPhone applications. And then you need iPhone's specific development kit to develop the games on their phone. Now, there's a reason why the two processes are very similar. First, you always need to know a language in order to make anything in the technology environment. Number two, you always need to have a way of connecting to what's already there. And if you're new to programming in general, you'll learn something called API, which is I believe it stands for Application Program Interface. Normally it's just referred to as API, and what it is it's the way in which one device connects to another. right? And well, what that means is the internet has certain protocols. The only way I can really describe this is by comparing it to the internet protocols. Nearly everybody knows what HTTP is. It's how you connect to the internet. Well, the HTTP itself is a type of protocol that serves an API. We use HTTP as our API to the internet. It's how we connect to the internet. Sure, we have a browser, but the browser is literally connecting to a bunch of servers that hold all the different code that we make on the internet. So we need an application, which is our browser, program, which is the browser's compiler, interface, which again is the browser. So literally the browser is our API to the internet. And that's the best way I can describe that. So first you need to know the language, then you need to know what's actually on the iPhone, because you are a developer coming into another group of developers' software. So you need to connect to that software so that you can utilize certain things in that software. And then you need to be able to compile that down into a program that can be used on the device. So that's why I assume the processors are usually similar, even though they're two different phones and there's giant wars about what can be done and what not on the phones and whether you should buy one or not. Now, if you don't mess with that whole mumbo jumbo and you just want to make a online application, right? You just want to make a video game that can be played in the browser. The thing is, it's not that it's not that easy. You would think it is, but the internet is the Wild West. There's probably 100 ways to do one thing, right? So the easiest way that I can think of is first learning HTML, which is the basic structure of any website. Then you have CSS, which is the coloring of any website. And then you have JavaScript, which is the behavior of any website. And if you want to go into like any type of JavaScript framework, I would have to suggest React.js at this time. I literally started learning React.js about a week ago, and I'm already loving how it implements into the browser, and it already uses ECMA 6, which is fantastic. And the reason why you want something like React is because with a video game, you're constantly changing the state of the video game. And it's very important that you have control over the state, because the state is an instance of what is currently happening. And within a video game, that instant constantly changes. So learning something like React might be beneficial, but for the most part, you'll be learning one of the many JavaScript game. That's good. Okay. As you can see, there's tons and tons of lovely JavaScript game engines out there, and you have these people with these very advanced methods of developing these game engines, and they're fantastic. And I almost cussed. We got past it. Let's see, where is the one that I used whenever I learned how to do it? I don't think I used any of these, to be honest. Let's go to my dashboard, because I probably connected to it. Quintus. That's what I used. This is a fantastic beginning JavaScript ability to make video games game engine. It's fantastic. And it's specifically for JavaScript friendly syntax. Sometimes you have game engines that are JavaScript technically, but they also need a backend to handle some of the knowledge. This is primarily JavaScript. And I don't have a lot of stuff on my GitHub because I have a very bad habit. I have ADHD, so I have a very bad habit of forgetting to commit my stuff and add it to my GitHub. But I've made a few video games using this method, and I believe I used a different engine as well. Let's see. What's this one? Play Canvas. That sounds familiar. I think I used this one for a little bit. I actually started in game development. That's what I first started in. That's what I wanted to. There we go, Chingu. This is the very first one that I made in code. I want to say this very directly. This is the first one that I made in code. And this is if you want to make video games with browser capability. Now, if you want to make cinematic scenes, if you basically want to make any of the console games, alright, and you don't have a lot of money and you don't know what to do, you need Blender. This is it's freaking awesome. Blender is awesome. I've been using Blender for so many years compared to what I've been doing in development, because number one, Blender is actually a multi-use type application. You can make many cinematic scenes with Blender. And before I started anything anywhere near game development, I started with media editing. So I would use Blender whenever I needed to do any type of CGI work. And I say work, but it was really free time. And I would normally just be making animated music videos for the most part. But I gained my beginning experience with Blender, and Blender does quite a few things that not other game making applications do. First of all, you can bring in your character and you can make a complete character. So you're going to need to learn 3D modeling, you're going to need to know how to provide 3D textures, and then you're going to need to look up Blender AI components, because you can already use the AI that's already implemented inside of Blender. Now, along with this, you also need to be able to create level creation. So I think I made a 5-level game in Blender, I think 2 years ago. And it was just a box that was traveling down the hallways. And learning how to develop levels inside of Blender is actually really simple, but it gets big very quick, very fast, and you'll probably spend 2 to 3 months learning how to use Blender and all the different facets. And then you'll be able to make a video game like you can play on the computer. Now, a lot of indie developers love to use this program, especially a lot of animation indie developers. And the reason being is because Blender's free. However, with any type of game creation, unless you are going to make a 2D game, you need to have a powerful graphics card. Now, how do you know what a powerful graphics card is? Well, the industry has a few different tricky methods to convince people what's powerful and what's not. And that's why I like benchmark pass. Pass mark. This site has been useful. I have used this site for literally a decade and a half. This site is fantastic in telling you where you are on the GPU level of power. And it goes same way for CPU and hard drive and PC, and it tells you how powerful your system is. Now, if I were to look for my graphics card, I would have to go quite a bit of ways, because there's the R9. There it is. There's mine. Only mine's a little bit different than this one, because I'm pretty sure that this one is not 4 gigs. Pretty sure that this is not. I'll probably bring something up. Okay, yeah, see, this is a 2 gig. They're measuring the 2 gigabyte processor. You can see this right here, 2 gigabyte, 256. I actually have something more powerful. 4 gigabyte R9 278X. Right? I have, I believe this one. Yeah, I have something that has more VRAM, and as you can see, it's quite pricey. This is a fantastic graphics card, but as you can see, it's definitely not the best on the market. And the reason why you need a powerful graphics card is because whenever you render any type of video onto a video game, and you're basically taking all the different parts and putting them together for the first time. I mean, in the Blender program, they're technically all together, but they're all technically also apart, and that's so that you can edit them. What it's doing is saving everything as a solid mass so that it doesn't come apart in the video game. So, unfortunately, the video game market is not nice to Radeon people. They're mostly NVIDIA fans. So if you have any type of Radeon technology, you're not going to be able to utilize it in order to make video games. And ironically, that's actually why I got that graphics card specifically. You need one of the G-Forces. And you can go through this list and you can find a decent price graphics card. But another thing that you'll also need is you're going to need a CPU. Now, the graphics card is obviously for the graphics. It's to map out all the different vectors and to mark all the different XYZ positions on the rendering process and the different sizes and weights and whatnot. And so it's primarily for graphics, but a lot of people think that games are played solely on the GPU, and that's simply not true. There's a reason why you also need a pretty high-end processor, and that's because of all the code that's writing in the background, such as the artificial intelligence, such as all the different interactions that happen between the graphical objects. All that logic is processed mostly by the CPU on your computer. So not only do you need a high-end GPU, but you also need a high-end CPU. Now, that's for 3D graphics. So if you develop anything that's not 3D graphics, if it's 2D graphics, or if it's just a text-based game, and I could go in right now and I could make a text-based game within moments because it's really easy, you're not going to need that much graphical power. If you're looking to make 2D games, you're not going to need that much power. And the reason being is because... Okay, so say we have a 1080p screen. That's 1080 pixels, right? That's one layer. Think of that as a layer. Think of that as a piece of paper, right? With a 2D game, it's just that piece of paper. With a 3D game, it's a pack of that paper, and each piece of paper is a multiplication of that 1080 pixels. And you need the processing power because the amount of information that goes back and forth is literally gigabytes. So unless you have a very powerful PC, you're going to be probably spending days waiting for this material to render. Now, if you came to this video thinking that this would be a one-stop solution for all of your programming gaming needs because you think it's super easy to make video games, I hate to disappoint you, but you are so far from the truth that it's not even funny. I spent 6 months studying 8 hours a day to only make a game where I traveled with a box around 5 levels. It was faster to learn how to make character models than it was to actually make a fully functional video game that didn't have any bugs. Now, that's not to discourage you, because the industry tends to make it look easy. You know, I have a great idea. It would be an awesome video game, but I just don't know how. That's actually what this video does. It is a guide for those who are potentially seeking how to make video games. So, one thing that I haven't talked about is you're gonna need to know math. With Blender, not so much, but if you're gonna develop a video game in JavaScript, or you're gonna develop a video game in one of the back-end languages, or especially if you decide that you want to develop a video game on the Android or the iPhone, you're gonna need to know math. You're gonna first need to know quite a bit of algebra, because most of the things that developers do are in algebra. But whenever you get into things like making games, unless you're going to make a game engine, I don't think you need to know physics. I don't think you need to know calculus and trigonometry and things like that, because most of that is usually handled by the game engine itself. However, if you decide to program your own artificial intelligence, then you're definitely going to need either a knowledge of physics, because you need to know the distance between you and the opponent and the surrounding opponents, and which ones would be detected first. So that would be physics. But I think you would also need to know discrete mathematics. And discrete mathematics is the optimization of your code. So if you've ever had a video game that runs horribly on your system, that's probably because the person who coded that video game did not implement a lot of the teachings that discrete mathematics provides. You'll learn most of the mathematics that you'll need to know when you start developing things, but I'm going to provide resources to those as well. So if you want a crash course on physics, you can go to, as you can see here, I've already done this, and you'll want to go here to this channel, and it's actually a fantastic channel on YouTube, and it teaches you physics. It teaches you a lot of different things other than physics, but the section of physics, and especially the section of how things were developed in video games, is vitally important for your development in video games. Now, as for discrete mathematics, you can literally just look the same thing up on YouTube. I'm not sure if Crash Course has their own thing on discrete mathematics, but discrete mathematics is just the optimization of code. So that is really the reason why you learn discrete mathematics, because you can write code normally without knowing discrete mathematics, but without discrete mathematics you'll be in the same position that the early programmers were experiencing, because they didn't know discrete mathematics and they didn't utilize the technology that they had to the fullest extension. So that's the primary reason why we learn discrete mathematics. Let's see, what else do you need to know? Okay, so I talked about Android development, I talked about Swift development, I talked about regular browser game development. Oh yes, you can make Flash games. Don't do it. I mean, you can do it, to each their own, but if you're trying to make any money off of this, don't make Flash games, because Flash is extremely insecure. There are so many different ways to hack Flash video games. It's not even funny. Most of the people who are developing video games now are using WebGL and using the basic HTML components, because HTML made a canvas which you can make video games on by incorporating JavaScript and CSS knowledge. If you're good enough at the mathematics and you can provide the pictures needed, you can actually develop it solely on the canvas. And I actually made a ping pong game for the Ruby on Rails course that was purely HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So Flash is a way to go, but if you're in this for the long haul, Flash is a technology that is dying out very slowly. It's kind of like GIF. Every once in a while you'll see another GIF, but GIF itself has been replaced by a new and better version of GIF. So, you know, it's one of those technologies that's going to be phased out, but you're still going to see it around the internet. And learning Flash means that you're going to have to download the Adobe suite. And that means, yeah, you're going to have to spend quite a bit of cash before you even see your first little project of a Flash game. It's not a wise way to go. What I have suggested is mostly free I think it's all free actually, what I've suggested. Oh yes. And whenever you go to submit your Swift, or whenever you go to submit your Android application, you'll be spending a little bit of money. I believe it's iPhone charges its developers $100 a year, and then Google Play is like $25. So you'll spend a little bit of money, but for the most part, what I've suggested is free. Now, actually, that brings me up to a great point. Let's go back to Solo Learn, because I didn't show you that they actually teach Swift. They teach literally every language that I've mentioned so far. You can learn Java, you can learn JavaScript, you can learn C#, you can learn Swift, HTML, CSS, and even a little bit of Squill, which Squill is... what is the actual name for Squill? S-query language. Standard query language, I think it is. Squill is for your database, and it's how you add and subtract database values. So you use Squill to grab something out of the database by using select all from blank, where blank is the same as blank. So Squill is your database, but yeah, you can learn HTML, you can learn Swift, you can learn JavaScript, you can learn the Java, and you can learn the CSS. Now, there should be a Ruby tutorial that's coming out pretty soon. I don't know what they've decided to do with the material that I handed them, because they hired me to do this course, and then they just kind of didn't contact me at all. It was wonderful. So they just hired me to do this and then didn't contact me. Yeah, lovely. I love it when people do that. But they're a very nice group. They don't communicate very well, but most of these are hired out, and I don't think the names are given to any of the individuals who make these. Yeah, they don't get to actually put their name on it, even though they're paid to do it, and they aren't doing it as ghost. I don't even know what you would call that, ghost something. But yeah, you get to learn all this different stuff, and it's for free. It's 100% for free. Now, what if you want to immediately put your skills to the test instead of go and try and make something, right? So say you learn by testing yourself every once in a while. Well, I forget what the application is called on Facebook. It's a Facebook application. Basically, it is a code challenge platform that is solely based off of video game algorithms. So in order to actually do anything in a video game, you need to know the algorithm that actually does that. But it is on Facebook. So if you don't have a Facebook, then you're not going to be able to access it, I don't think. But yeah, there's actually more than one type of code challenging platforms that are specifically video game based. I know that there's another one that teaches you JavaScript by making you play through a video game and use the JavaScript syntax in order to do actions inside the video game. And developers have been trying to do this for the past 5 years, because obviously if you're engrossed into a video game, you learn things quite quickly so that you can adapt to the environment, and it's more receptive that way. But yeah, that's how you would challenge your own knowledge in order to progress what you know on a regular basis, rather than sitting down and setting everything up just so you can code something out that should have only taken like 5 minutes. So, and that right there is why I'm a Ruby developer, is because once I have everything installed on a computer, I can go straight into programming. With Java, you have to set up a template, and you have to make sure your classes are in order, and then you spend about 20 minutes altogether defining everything, and then like another 20 minutes actually providing the program that is going to be running. So, but I mean, you can't use Ruby on the Android, so yeah, there's that. I mean, you can use JRuby, and I suppose you could find an APK that'll do that, but yes, everything you can do is learnable here, and then you can, once you're done learning what you want to learn, you can go off and start creating things and start doing challenges and improving yourself. And to be honest, it's not going to be I'm going to make a game within a couple of months. It's not going to be that. Because I know that whenever I started I wanted to make a video game, I immediately said, I want to make a video game within the next year. And that was my yearly resolution, so to speak. And then I spent 6 months figuring out how to use Blender. And then I made one video game that was 5 levels long. And then I found out that I quickly didn't want to become a game developer. Not because I didn't enjoy the process, but because I simply couldn't afford to be one. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort in order to make video games, and I simply didn't have the time. I needed to use my time wisely, so instead I became a web developer, and I still freelance write. But I do have a course, and I'll leave that in the description. It'll teach you HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript. I don't go very deep in JavaScript because, number one, it changed, and ECMA 6 is different than ECMA 5 by quite a lot. jQuery, Bootstrap, and then I teach you Ruby, and there's some computer science in there. I spent a long time making it. I think I spent 3 months making it. But I also wanted to make sure that everybody could access it. So unlike the other courses that charge like $200 or whatever the new maximum is for Udemy, because at one point there were courses that were $500, and then there were courses that were $300 that charged the absolute maximum for their courses, and the only way people would buy them is if it was a $10 sale, because I know I bought a lot of courses that were $10. So instead of running it like those developers, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and make this available to everyone. I'm still going to try and make a decent amount of money from it, but I'm not going to try and price gouge people. So I only charge, right now, as of making this video, the course is only $40. So if you want to go down the Ruby path and learn how to be a web developer and make a side career out of being a web developer, and then you can do game development on the side with all the languages that you know from the course, then yeah, it's an all-in-one package. It's the first full stack web development course that's available on Udemy, and I actually had to get special approval for that. So, alright, so I think I'm done with this video. I don't know. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I know that I have a very, very relaxing voice. I've been told that unless I'm peppy, I'm usually a person that people can turn on and fall asleep to. And that's not even because I have a boring voice. I just have a very soothing voice. That's what I've been told. I don't know. I might be self-flattering. But if you have any questions about what to do, or if you'd like to see me maybe make a 2D game on the channel, I know I'm a rather new developer. I would love to get the chance to interact with some people who view these videos. But yeah, until next time, like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah.